Hello, good morning, and welcome to the 10th installment of the Body Mind Connection, an educational and child development process for AuDHD children and teenagers. My name is Sinead Friel. I run Sincerity School CIC, and I am documenting the development of the school model and also sharing the learning theory that's coming through as we do so, um, for everyone to use for free, right? So all of the information that you see here you can use liberally at will for yourself, for your own facilities, for your care of an AuDHD child, whether in an educational setting or at home, right? So all of this is very relevant and useful. Now, there are a bunch of videos on my YouTube under my name, Sinead Friel, which is Irish and everyone will forget, right? If you just look, right, it'll be about somewhere, right? You'll find all of the videos there. And it's also there. Sincerity Schools Worldwide is another one to look up. The aim is that we're building the school model so that it can be transferable and globally applied, right, for AuDHD children all around the world, because there's lots of them and there's going to be more. Now, I'm about to take you through the next phase of this session and the next phase of this process, and it's requiring me to kind of double down on what's happening in schools currently and why what they're doing is not working, right, and how to create a situation where it begins to work, or where how we build a learning facility or a form of learning that actually suits AuDHD and doesn't write against it, right? So today we're looking at connection over correction, replacing punitive measures in AuDHD care and education, punitive being punishment, right? So schools are not care facilities, and that's what AuDHD children need most. I'm going to be throwing a couple of punches this session. I'm not really, I'm kind of tired and I just want to be direct because, you know, I'm sort of at this point now where I feel a little frustrated and exhausted by not being heard in various different spaces in my life. So I'm just not pussyfooting, right? There's no point anymore, right? I have a confession to make. I am embarrassed to tell the education staff at my son's school what I know he needs from them at times, right? And the reason for my embarrassment is this. I feel like I am asking them to connect with him, to intuitively consider his feelings. I'm asking them to prioritise his well-being above his education. And I keep seeming to do that, which for me as an ex-educator, I used to find parents like this, I used to call them doses, right? I just thought, you're so much effort and you are entitled and you're expecting too much. Those are the attitudes. And I know these are the attitudes now coming from my understanding of how learning actually happens, particularly for AuDHD children, without their well-being and nervous system health being a primary focus and the first focus throughout the entirety of their day, they cannot access the education that's available in mainstream schools. So this individualised care feels like overwhelm for the staff, as well as feels like short-sighted and petted for me, when what I'm offering and suggesting is in fact the route into learning for all of the children if we were to apply it on a collective level, right? I'm asking for him to have individualised care, certainly, but also for care to be the priority focus in the education system, where it's impossible, right? So I feel not really like they listen. Of course they do. They're a wonderful school. They're really, really attentive to me, but their priorities are markedly different, right, to my own. And whilst I understand that old system has done what it needed to do, it is failing for a reason, and it is failing all the children systemically right now, not just those in SEND education or those with SEND needs. And the sooner we grasp this, that it's in fact well-being and nervous system health that incites learning from within the child, which is what the body-mind connection is about, then I am going to always come across to these people as a pain in the neck and like I don't know what I'm talking about, and that I am just overly protective of my son, which is absolutely not what's happening here. I know the intrinsic serious damage that is caused by a school system that functions the way it does. And I'm going to break all that down today, right? Simple, balanced, neutral, clear, so we understand the marked difference between what AuDHD children actually need and what they're being put through in school environments currently. Now, I seem to be asking them to love him, right? And this is where schools are failing, because the love and nurturing that we expect in parenting is not happening inside of school systems. And it is integral to neurological and physiological and emotional health in children long term. Because I was undiagnosed when he was born, I instantly interpreted his needs from an AuDHD perspective. And I had these enormous standards for those needs, right? And I wanted to do attachment parenting and I insisted upon it. I could see and was very rigorous about what it was he struggled with, and I wanted to protect him from all forms of suffering. But that suffering was coming through an undiagnosed neurodivergence lens. I was very, very attuned to sensory needs all of a sudden, and things I had tolerated for myself, I would not tolerate for him. And this seemed to come out of nowhere for the people around me. And I got judged, derided, undermined, disrespected. My voice as a mother was not listened to, and my intuitive understanding of what he was signalling to me was dismissed, because my interpretation of his experience was invisible. And this is the problem that AuDHD children suffer with currently. They can sit in a classroom and appear like all the rest of them, and their care needs are invisible. Their care needs can be bypassed in a way that others in SEND education with either profound need or more explicit need cannot be bypassed. And it's this bypassing of those needs that is extremely harmful, that people cannot see, that is frustrating me, right? So if I sound frustrated at times, I'm going to really try not to. It's simply because of needing this to matter now and soon. So my suffering was invisible for a long time, and so is the children's. Okay, their experience remains unseen. And when I was educated as a teacher, I did not get any training on nervous system health. I did not learn any. I learned about how brains work for learning, but did I hear anything about the nervous system? No. And was there any link presented to me between the nervous system and the brain's processes in order to learn? No. And that is still the case for most all education systems today and education training. Teachers are terrified because they have no idea what I'm talking about. Now, the definition of an education. So it's the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at school or university. Now, look how top heavy and one-sided that definition is. Right, now for a child whose internal workings, right, in fact govern their learning, this system is flawed immediately. The idea of education coming from outside is wrong. Education and learning happens through the intrinsic relationship between the neurology and the physiology of a child. So the nervous system and the brain working in tandem. Now for AuDHD children, they have low vagal tone, rigid heart rate variability, and an incapacity to stay regulated or steady. That steadiness required internally is more difficult for them to achieve, the ventral vagal state, and also to maintain. It is also more difficult for them to create flexibility between states. They tend to flip between panic and collapse, right? Often all day long, which is extremely exhausting and often overrides their own wish for education, their own wish to engage, their own desire to be a part of the learning that's happening. But because of us not getting this seesaw effect that's occurring inside of them all the time, the education we are currently forcing them through is doing nothing for them except causing them harm. It is not giving them access to education at all. They cannot physically access it. In fact, the way that it is designed, due to its punitive nature, due to its behaviourist focus, due to the obedience required, right? And the way we observe obedience in AuDHD children, we believe obedience to indicate a willful wish to learn, when in fact that's not what's happening inside of them. All of that is creating shame patterns inside of the children and disconnecting them further from the very nervous system that they need to balance in order to learn healthily. So it's upside down. This definition of education is upside down. Now, here's the definition of a healthcare facility, and I'm indicating another gap, right, in the understanding of what's happening here for AuDHD children by presenting these definitions to you. And I'm offering them in a way where I hope we can consider from a different perspective what is missing for these children and what needs reform as soon as possible, in order to support them, and not just support them, but allow them to flourish healthily in a way I know they can, right? So a healthcare facility is defined as any place where services are provided that involve caring for people's health and treating people who are ill. Now, AuDHD children can be perceived externally as not suffering. Therefore, their needs can be bypassed. The care that they require doesn't translate in a way that education facilities respect, right? And the AuDHD itself, according to the media currently and all past media, is the least researched, least understood, right, and least provided for neurodivergent neurotype, right, that exists currently. And the implication is that it's a disorder of the mind. I heard an influencer say the other day it's a mental health condition. She called it a mental health condition because that's what medical systems would lead you to believe, that they need medication, that they need harmed on a biological level, rather than supported for the sensitivity of their nervous system and to improve the vagal tone internally. This is a physiological construct that requires our care, attention and education in order to inform how we best serve them. It is not a disorder, because disorder suggests, and this is what needs to be clear for everyone, disorder and illness suggest getting better at a standard that copies others, or, right, not having the potential for growth at all. There is an assumption that with special education and neurodivergence, that these things do not have a trajectory of success, that there isn't potential for these children to have incredibly happy, fulfilling, fantastic, wonderful lives. I want to reinforce something here. AuDHD as a whole has the potential for full, complete and absolute happiness and well-being. And I don't mean to a lower standard than normal. I mean as unique and as brilliant as you can imagine. But that uniqueness for a neurotype, because that's what it is, it's a type of brain, it's not a disorder, right? It's part of nature. Our unnatural preoccupation with it being flawed is causing the children to be treated as flawed in the school system and embedding belief systems within them about their inherent nature and their abilities that are unfounded and will cause harm in the long term. Told you I'm packing punches today, and I am not holding back. Now, so the body-mind connection, this is a process for AuDHD children to lead them to full health, happiness and well-being. And I say full intentionally there. Full. Not, give them a happy life as an alternative to what's possible for a neurotypical. No, I mean a full and complete, unique, original, brilliant life, a human right, that is afforded them when we treat them as individuals who are part of nature, right? Who have all the potential available, and we simply have to consider the process of learning differently. Learning happens from within oneself and is not externally directed, nor is it uniform. So learning happens within a child through play, exploration and connection first, child-led, safe, nurturing experiences. And the safety is the major thing. The root of the body-mind connection process is that we continue to return children to a connection to themselves, and this connection to themselves then starts to evolve into connection to others, and then expands further connection with the world, where they have an holistic experience of their own identity. They are self-identified, self-sourced, right, and their health is and their nervous system is variable, flexible and expansive. Right? Because when we speak about nervous system health, we are not just speaking about correcting the extremities. We're also speaking about the potential for well-being, the vast range of positive, powerful, happy, joyful, ebullient, effervescent, emotional range inside of a healthy function nervous system, and consequently what that can then inform inside of the development of the brain for a child who has access to more than just stress, overwhelm and collapse. There's an inherent moral message inside of what I'm saying here. There's something ethical inside of what I'm saying. The children deserve, and as a human right, should be afforded whole system health in a way that all children should be afforded whole system health, and this discrimination and prejudice that exists currently is blocking that. So the centre point of the learning is within a child whose nervous system is mostly in ventral vagal state and can move fluidly between other states quickly or easily. Neurodivergent children struggle with rigid nervous systems which move into collapse and panic too fast. Without intensive care, training and support, no one will take responsibility for their nervous system care. If I were to ask the question to a school, who is responsible for the nervous system care of the AuDHD children? They would not say to me, the teacher, without lying. Because when we approach a teacher or an educator, the first thing they prioritise is not the nervous system state of the children, but the learning inside of the classroom. And their interpretation of learning is obedience, which is dysregulation, not handled, where children are forced into situations where they cannot regulate themselves, and they are forced to sit and adhere to an environment that is in opposition to whatever is happening inside of them internally. The person who is truly responsible at the moment for the nervous system health of the child is the child. And these children are not capable of carrying that responsibility in their early years whatsoever. And currently the education system is doing exactly that. It is putting the responsibility on them because their needs are not being met, and there are no preventative measures in place to support nervous system health and well-being, and therefore as a consequence their brain development is compromised. They're not ill. They require not more but less of the unnecessary, and this is what we're talking about today. The idea of flipping on its head this behaviourist kind of teacher-led learning system and showing how removing what is unnecessary actually creates a culture of safety, fluidity, peace, enjoyment, play, fun and flourishing, both in health, well-being and learning for AuDHD children. If we care first, connect first and love first, which costs something that feels too great for teachers and educators at the moment, which is time, the children will naturally access learning on their own. It's easier this way. The beliefs blocking progress. AuDHD children are perceived as naughty, willfully disobedient. I hate that word, but I learned it in England and now it has infiltrated my system. In Ireland we call children bold. But since I've been over here, that's the word now, and I hate saying it. It makes me bilious. Anyway, so naughty, inattentive, willfully disobedient and uninterested in learning due to sensory needs and social seeking. This is completely wrong. They're indicating unmet need and nervous system dysregulation. They have absolutely no control over that, and you can see fight, flight, freeze, fawn and collapse, right, dorsal vagal state, inside of all of these perceived behaviour issues. The responsibility is on the environment and the staff and those who are refusing to create care communities for these children. AuDHD children are perceived as disordered and unwell with no prospect of improvement. This is completely wrong. Their states are temporary. The dysregulated states are temporary, and I will talk about that in a second. This flexibility, which is kind of explored in the doctrine of autonomic space and supported and integrated into the body-mind connection process, recognizes the temporary nature of what the nervous system is doing and how our perception of a child is sometimes rigid and defined by dysregulation and not in fact the state of a dysregulated child. They could be two very different children, but I will talk to you about that later. AuDHD children are made responsible for their own learning in an education facility which is performance-based, punitive and shaming, and they can't do that. When your nervous system and your biology is designed to constantly drag you back to what your body is doing, right? You're going to develop false compensations in order to cope with the suffering that's ensuing internally. And one of those false compensations is dissociation. Another one is meltdowns and dysregulation and emotional outbursts. All of this is as a result of the shaming, the punitive measures, and the performance-based approach to learning and the education of children that directly opposes the nature of the AuDHD child. Their nervous system and sensory needs are considered a disruption to the others because they are not perceived as obedient. That is completely unhealthy, right? So, how teachers are trained to think. I'm exposing a few things here. I used to be one of these teachers, so I can take ownership over this. And for any teachers watching, if you find this triggering, good, let's sit with that, right? Control of the classroom indicates my learning and teaching is good and successful, or are good and successful. I don't know why is and are not putting themselves in the right place for me lately. I think I'm tired. Right, so all forms of need expressed by neurodivergent children are a disruption to learning, and I am the source of learning, so they should not ever disrupt me. None of this is accurate, right? The entire premise of education as a whole currently goes against nervous system health and development and brain development. And learning is the relationship between nervous system development and brain development. Learning happens within that and is led by children, not by teachers. Right. I am the centre point of a child's experience in school, and everything they learn should come from me. The knowledge is first, not connection with them. Again, complete lies, a total illusion. Can't even give it energy because it is just a made up concept. It is the opposite of what learning is. Another thing that teachers think, I do not have the time for extensive care, nor do I have the training or understanding. I can't show this outwardly. That's a major issue for teachers currently. They do not have the intensive training or knowledge required to provide appropriate care for SEND. The neurodivergent children in their care are not getting what they need because the teachers have not been provided what they need. And also, quite a lot of them undiagnosed neurodivergence. For me, moving into teaching was easy because I was like, right, I know what I'm really good at. I'll stick to this one singular subject from my monotopic thinking. I will be in complete control of the classroom, so I cannot make a mistake. And I will never be called out for my own dysregulation because I can manage things to manage around me. I was managing myself through control of my role. A lot of neurodivergent people have moved into teaching because it's a way to develop authority and career progression that is entirely self-directed. And it also provides safety when you've spent your entire life in an unsafe body, right? It's like, this feels like the safest option for me, where I'm not going to fail and they're not going to throw things at me that I don't know how to do, right? And neurodivergence, you get rejected from most all other forms of work because of the demands on you on an executive function level, right? Like, there are things that will require executive functioning that is consistent and constant, right? And honestly, teaching isn't the solution. The way that it runs now, it's not. But at the time that I went in, that's what I was thinking. That's how I was thinking, unconsciously for the most part, because I didn't know I was undiagnosed. It nearly killed me. And the teachers are suffering an enormous amount. They are overloaded, they are disrespected, they are working to performance measures, and those performance measures are then being projected onto the children. It is extremely stressful. And stress cannot play a role in the health and development of children. Okay, AuDHD children look mostly the same as other children, so I can treat them the same, interpret them from the same lens. That is the most dangerous part of all of this. It's the undermining of what AuDHD children actually go through and what long-term we are doing to them by bypassing that suffering. So professional and austere role teachers play is in opposition to the needs of AuDHD children as well. And this is something that kind of needs to be addressed explicitly here. I knew as a teacher I could show up to care for these children from a place of emotional resonance, understanding, intuition, as a mother. You know, like I had a lot of mothering energy in me, right? And I knew the children around me well. The demands on me in the classroom disrupted that capacity to be there for them and to create environments that were a comfort and a regulatory tool and respected them. Children are not offered respect either in junior or secondary schools currently, and it would be remiss of me and also a lie if I was to suggest that that is the case. There's not. Everything's a tick list, and a tick list is not intrinsic care, and they require care communities, not education facilities. Education happens as a byproduct of appropriate, intensive care. So AuDHD children need a caring facility to support the growth of a healthy brain and nervous system. Right, the title is way behind the picture, sorry about that. So AuDHD children's experiences, because their suffering is internal, remains invisible unless the depth of education and training improves. Until education facilities become care facilities, AuDHD children cannot and will not be able to access an education. Until educators accept that their role as educator only is not enough for AuDHD children, schools will continue to fail. The thing is, it's not relaxing being in an educator-only role. They have too much to teach them. They have zero time. They're in crowd control mode, right? And they're utterly exhausted. When we realise that this function, this role we've given teachers no longer applies, it is no longer helpful, they'll relax and go, oh, thank God. Because they'll be able to see that to shift into care facilities that include education as part of brain and nervous system development, the pressure is off these teachers. They can be themselves. They can play. They can be part of the artwork. They can enjoy the children. They can enjoy the process. The time constraint disappears. They can put their hearts into it again. What is being asked, right, of schools now is to let go of everything that's gone on before, because it is not working. Until they accept that, schools will continue to fail AuDHD children, both in the immediate and long term, denying them the growth required for health in adult life. So I'm just comparing the two so we grasp it in full, right? So caring facilities for AuDHD are child-centric, free and choice-based, that's on the left there, interest-led, connection first, and well-being is a priority. And you can see the way that it looks. There's chaos, there's play, there's freedom. The pressure, the rush of priority is off. Children can be themselves. There's not uniformity. They're not being rigorously treated. They're not being disrespected. We are loving them. It shouldn't be that hard. And then on the other side, schools as a whole now in their maintained facility function. So they're adult-centric, which means the teacher is at the centre. They're rigid, pressure-fueled, behaviour-dependent, and performance is priority. Which is, again, externally sourced education, which doesn't exist. It is a giant illusion. Right, now, flipping the behaviour script in connection-first caring communities. Inattention is not a willpower problem. Evading instructions is not a behavioural problem. Excessive stimming, reaching for other children, playing to regulate are all not behavioural problems, and yet they are the first thing teachers want to squash when they see them. They are tells that a care need is not being met, and the way to meet it is to prioritise all children and all their nervous systems in the same way AuDHD children need it. And how does that look? Let's talk about that, right? So let's solve this preventative issue, because what we have at the moment is children who are flipping from panic, overwhelm and collapse in schools because the nervous system is being bypassed or ignored or not recognised, and a load of different things are thrown at them when they dysregulate. They'll be stuck in a calm corner, barely recovered and back in a seat again, and they're knackered and overwhelmed and confused. They'll be given a load of fidget toys and then punished for using them. Right? And then when they say they have needs, they want to move, they want to get out, their brains are overwhelmed, they've run out of neurotransmitters in order to access the learning they've been given. It's again considered a behavioural issue, and they wait until there's a meltdown before something actually happens, because the rigour and behaviour focus and performance driven school is carrying on without them. That train has left the station and they are left to collapse, alone by themselves, misunderstood, feeling like there is something wrong with them, and there is not. So the doctrine of autonomic space recognises that children need healthy autonomic space, room to feel, to transition, to shift and to stabilise their nervous system state all day long. And when children, they can't do this alone. I repeat, they cannot naturally, when they are young, do that alone. Healthy autonomic space means the child can climb from calm to energized, focused, without overshooting into panic, and can downshift from stress back to connection with themselves, not just us, without dropping into collapse. Teachers have a window of 5 minutes per child most days, right? They look at a child, if it has stopped crying, they consider the child to be regulated. If they see a child who looks exhausted, emotional, they'll talk to them for a bit. The child may not process a single thing that is being said. The child may be in total nervous system collapse and no one would have any idea. A child might move into panic or rage or anger, and immediately parents are called. There's a whole hoo-ha. They force them to talk. They try and resolve it through remedial conversation, when it has nothing to do with relationship and everything to do with the child's nervous system and whatever they have been put through that day. We are making the children responsible for something they have no control over, and until co-regulation is part of the design of a school, they'll remain in this flip-flopping state, and long-term is extremely damaging. How do we solve the problem of prevention? Right, so children are spending so much energy on staying safe internally that there's no bandwidth left for tasks and instruction. I don't know why I said left twice. I've been up very early. In essence, they are silently suffering and not accessing the learning at all. The culture of care needs to change, where their needs are accessed intrinsically via whole class approach. So nervous system regulation in schools is often a measure taken too late, as I said, right? They're not regulating the children at that point. They're lifting them from collapse, panic and complete overwhelm. They are not returning them to a ventral vagal state quickly enough or regularly enough. If we give every child what AuDHD children need, they will all flourish. If we have a teacher or facilitators who are modelling regulation all day long, I am bringing presence to this moment. Let's do some breathing. Take some time to slow down and register where we are. Check in how we're feeling. All this sort of stuff, right? Using emotional space, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence to apply regularly and individually with children, but also as a whole class approach, bringing awareness to the body constantly. Visual prompts and time to reflect and reset during transitions, supporting their executive functioning in all the ways that are possible and necessary. Some children will need it, some children won't. Who cares, right? Make sure they all have it. Regulating relationships, warmth, presence, attention and choice over how to manage overwhelm. Staff trained in recognising overwhelm cues before panic or collapse happen. Immediate means to reduce sensory processing which do not increase shaming or punitive measures, right? At the minute, children who are going through sensory hell haven't got the language for it, because why on earth are they explaining to us where it's too noisy or it's too bright or suddenly they can't cope? They don't know that that's happening, right? And equally, we can see it if we observe it from an educated perspective, but most all teachers aren't, right, holding that information. They do not know, right, that that's what's occurring, and they remove children, right, single them out, isolate them, right, quiz them, right, stresses them out further, right, and don't have immediate measures in place to create soft, slow, balanced environments. And equally, the way that teaching is happening, it's teach, activity, teach, activity, teach, activity. There's no downtime in the default mode network for absorption of information. There's not enough time outside in nature so they can replenish the neurotransmitters needed to continue focused. The pace is against the nervous system. The nervous system does not work in tandem with the pace of teaching currently in both junior and secondary schools. And the regulation process is not depersonalized. This is an important one for me. I have to look at my son sometimes when he is doing things, and I need to identify the emotion he is going through and then communicate with him on that emotion as it is separate to himself, and stay with him in my regulated state of calm and full acceptance whilst that emotion moves through him. He comes out of that grateful to me for not personalising that situation. The second we personalise it and say they are the issue and not the emotion itself, we create more dysregulation, shaming, and a child who is more likely to mask and not trust us in the future. Can you see how all of this is happening inside of schools? So modelling, practicing and scripting choice-based and child-led means of regulating. So before that crisis point is hit, we are teaching children and modelling to children regulation, presence. This is the calm corner. You can do this or this here. When you feel like this, you can do this, this or this. We can do this, this or this for you, and take them through the process so they're familiar with it. This is all very time consuming, isn't it? Good in care communities for children who have extreme intensive care needs. This is not too much. This is not enough. Right? There is always more. Praise, attention, connection, presence, and classrooms designed to fit sensory needs which change throughout the day. Recognizing co-regulation first, last, and all day long for the whole group. A teacher who is more concerned with classroom control and less concerned with creating relationship with the children is not a teacher who is in a healthy, regulated state. There are too many children in the classrooms. It's impossible for them. They don't have enough time. It's impossible for them. They're being judged on behaviour. It's impossible for them. They are deeply dysregulated themselves and cannot provide the children what they need. Now, monotropism friendly approaches. This is about attention tunnels. I just touched on this, so we'll go into it now in more detail. Schools ask too much, do too much, and have too much going on day to day. If the focus is on growing healthy nervous systems and brain function, rather than jamming children full of information they don't need, right, then 1 or 2 topics a day, approached through art, play, and nature time, and resting states included, is enough to incite learning from within oneself, which is the approach for body-mind connection. Observe well-being rather than assess performance. That's a big ask. Right, when we start to come from that angle, that starts to collapse everything we've been taught about education that's incorrect. And it is a big ask for educators currently to even absorb that one statement, because it completely negates how they treat themselves inside of it and how they treat the children as a whole. So key AuDHD struggles: working memory limits, time blindness, distractibility, and task initiation difficulties. This is variable throughout the day based on, guess what? Nervous system health and regulation. And the more regulated long term the nervous system becomes, the more flexible the heart rate variability, the more flexible their shifts, the more improved and powerful their working memory becomes, time blindness becomes less of an issue, distractibility becomes less of an issue, task initiation becomes less of an issue. And I want you to imagine, long form, what that feels like for a child. It is revelatory. So nervous system needs consistent all-day co-regulation from genuinely safe adults, where it's modelled to whole group and individual. Low-threat, sensory-aware, autonomy-honouring environments that reduce load on the nervous system. Explicit executive functioning scaffolds that are always available and laid out in an organised visual fashion. I need everything for me organised visually in front of me in order to get on with my day. I can't have my pens in a bag. They need to be in front of me. I need my 3 drinks, and there's always 3, in front of me. I need exactly all of the books that I require visually in front of me, because those visual prompts, it means I don't go into I always struggle with object constancy, and if something disappears from my view, my brain deprioritizes it, right? And this is where visual organization creates calm internally for children, right? I had this issue yesterday. I'll talk about that in a second, right? Movement breaks and green time. Now, they need time outdoors, and sometimes they'll need it at inconvenient moments. Can we prioritize those inconvenient moments and let the children go outside when they need? A child we see as constantly disruptive is a child who is crying out for connection to themselves and space and peace and regulation, and we consistently refuse to give it to them, right? Consistently refuse to give it to them in education systems, because we assume that that child is disrupting our priorities. That child is in a position where they need care, and their care needs are vital to their overall long-term health. And we've spoken about that at length in other videos, so I'm not going to go into it now. But it is not something we can deny them because there's no time. Because it disrupts the other students. What are you talking about, right? Low demand, interest-based pathways to learning, right? Again, all of this is demanding more time, slower time. And it is entirely necessary, because everything we've been taught about education is backwards. So, an AuDHD child who is constantly scanning for danger, which is what happens when they are in a constantly dysregulated state, cannot access learning, won't communicate this verbally, and needs modelling, support and care to re-establish connection to themselves. Modelling basically means be lovely to them, be nice to them, be present for them, say their name, love them, express them how much they matter to you, give them love and attention. This is all very intuitive, what I'm saying here, right? I'm using really formal language for something that is within us naturally. I watched my little boy through the window of his classroom recently. It was the last period of the day, and I saw him sitting by himself at a desk with his head on a school bag. My son has never taken a nap through the day. He's not napping, he's not tired, he's in collapse. And my heart snapped in two when I saw this. The other children were on the floor. They don't trust him on the floor because he grabs at people. He wants to regulate, and he is trying to regulate, and he is trying to feel safe. And because no one will pick him up or hug him or hold his hand or walk over and ask him his name and ask him how he's feeling and tell him everything's okay, because that is just not in the vernacular of the education systems currently. He is left to deal with that himself, and he has no idea what is going on inside of him. An AuDHD child who is in flow state, learning through choice and engaged in tasks, and are free to leave and return to whatever they're doing as they need, will present as a completely different child to the one above. And I mean completely different in terms of intelligence, capacity, communication, personality, humour. They are completely different. And what is the difference? Our understanding, our trust in them, and what they express as a need. The body-mind connection process speaks to time, right, and flexibility, a child who is for a number of months considered extremely disruptive will be a completely different child when we continue to meet those needs that they are signalling to us. If we can trust that this is a process and don't force them to suppress, we transform the child as a whole and their long-term potential as they grow. So our understanding, our trust in them, our regulated state, and our respect are what's going to change the care and the outcomes for AuDHD children overall. And I have spoken at length about the outcomes for children when their needs are not being met, and they're in previous videos if you'd like to revise this. Today's was a little abrupt, right? But I'm at that point now where punitive care does not serve the child, it serves the school system. Punitive care does not serve learning or protect learning, right? It, in fact, reinforces obedience and masking, suppression and ill health and adaptive stress response long term in children for the future, which creates heart disease, all sorts of other issues. So we are not speaking simply about learning goals or performance. We're speaking about human rights here, the ethical construct of what these children need. And it's intensive transformation that's required. And it takes a lot of honesty in order to confront that. And I just really hope that people start to confront it. If indeed any of this has been useful to you today, please consider donating. I would really appreciate it because we are determined to make this happen by hook or by crook. And all of your support really matters. Thank you very much.